How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, great discussion today. We are going to be talking about creating relationships with those you lead. This is going to be a very needed discussion because if you're crossing into the leadership position, you have to realize something. Having the power of the position doesn't last long. Your key is to build relationships in an effort to be productive. And we're going to kind of give some tips that will help you establish relationships with those that you supervise. My guest today is going to be Connie Alleyne, as you can see. Let's do this. How about I introduce you first, then go on to the sponsors, and then we'll go into the show.
Whichever way you want to do it.
I like to do it that way, Connie.
Oh, sure.
I'm just trying to establish a relationship, letting you know people come first.
Oh, my goodness.
See what I did there? You know, I got a lecture today, by the way. A good friend of mine named Rios, she noticed on my signature. So here I am promoting leadership. But on my signature, you know, the signature at the end of each email, it's my title and name. It should be my name and then the title, the person first.
Yes.
So I said that is extremely life-changing.
Look at that.
But yeah, so I don't know, just unique things. Hey, guys, if you're checking out your signatures, I think that was pretty good advice. Make sure it's your name first, who you are, your person, and then the position. I thought that was pretty cool. But Connie, do you mind introducing yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's Connie Alleyne. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. I am also the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon. And apparently, Anthony is my friend.
What? What is that supposed to mean?
I don't know. It just came out.
Hey, the picture you sent me was the picture from your Tinder profile.
Oh my God! No way.
Check out the thumbnail.
Okay,
she doesn't have to
listen to him. Oh my God! He asked me, just so you guys know, he asked me to send him a picture for our thumbnail for the show, and I sent a picture. Nothing crazy, so please don't even go there. And of course, you know, Anthony being Anthony, he has decided to ask me, do I dress like this for church?
Look at this. Look at this. And then you look at mine, and it's this is the best I'll ever look. Oh, that's it. That's all I got. You know,
let it out. But you guys gotta know, I love this guy. He's awesome. He's a great person, and he's super funny.
And I appreciate the pictures. We're good.
I'm telling Deanna, please no. Yeah, don't worry. She's gonna watch because I'm on tonight.
No, say everything you want. You know what I mean? Yeah. Deanna really watches Tier Talk. You know what I mean? It's what she does before she goes to bed. Ooh, what shows you do on Tier Talk? Sure, let me watch it. You know what I mean? But you're right. Can I tell you something? Because you are on it, she may watch it. She doesn't watch it because I'm on it. You know what I mean?
She hears you all the time.
Yeah, I know, but still, it's important. I want her to watch the show, and well, she supports me in other ways. Wait, hold on.
I'm sure she does.
Professionally,
when you're screaming for water, or you want coffee, or whatever it is you want her to bring from upstairs.
Yes,
or when you want her to get the kids.
Well, she's doing that.
Yeah,
right
like
now.
if Sienna comes downstairs right now.
Oh yeah, yeah. But the funny thing is that I think the kids are starting to know. You know what I mean? I think they're starting to respect the Tier Talk time. So yeah, and later on, I want to, if I can remember, I want to share that story that I told you earlier today about Sienna.
No way, do not.
No, because I want to play it when she gets married.
No way.
All right. Hey, Kai, real quick, how's the Civilian Correction Academy going?
Civilian Corrections Academy is going really good. We continue to grow. We're doing an end of year event where we're kind of offering like 20% off of the 4 tiers. So there's like 4 payment tiers. And now we're doing like a 20% off to close out the year. Kind of like our just give back. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, whatever you want to call it. But so that'll be interesting to see, you know, just how many organizations or institutions take advantage of that. Because, you know, many people like, Connie, we need this. I got an email the other day and they were like, where was this when I first started?
Right.
You know, so I think it's really good feedback as well as just engagement from the different facilities. I'm enjoying it.
I think it's an investment that shows the civilians that they have value as well. We want to help you navigate through the house. Me and Joe got a message the other day from someone that they wanted to let us know that one of the videos that me and Joe did was used in their training.
Nice.
It was out in Wisconsin. So you never know the people you're gonna reach. And the funny thing, guys, I just want to mention something. As you start to kind of see the end of your career, you realize that positions really don't matter. It's really about who you've impacted, where that legacy is. So I find it to be awesome to have someone say, hey, Gangi, we played your video, it was great. And it's like, okay, because that kind of is in line with what I want now. I don't think I was ever positional driven, but there were times where a new position got me excited. But now as I could see the end right there of my career, I just want to have that impact, and I think that's what I'm trying. That's what you're doing with the Civilian Corrections Academy. Let me get these sponsors, get this done. So here we go, guys. So first sponsor we have is American Military University. If you guys get a chance, please check out American Military University. It's a great school, very supportive of what we do in corrections, very supportive of what we do here on Tier Talk. Again, it's an online school. So if you're looking to, bring some experience back into the classroom, get that degree, American Military University could definitely help you along the way. And we also have Guardian RFID. From inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence, Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit guardianrfid.com for more information. Guys, they posted a great video up there yesterday or the day before. I would show the video, and I'm sure they wouldn't mind if I did, but I don't want to get a copyright strike. Not that they would do it, but YouTube just plays their game. So if you guys get a chance, go to the Guardian RFID YouTube channel, and this is the video you guys got to check out. It's pretty impressive. Has nothing to do about business or anything like that, because that's not what they do. They really try to put content up there that's supportive of the people that work the profession. But the name of the video is CORE coming 11/1/22, and that's the cover. It's got the two gentlemen, Steve Menard. I don't know the other gentleman's name, but if you guys get a chance, check out that video. It's pretty impressive. Also, my 2 books are on the market, Inmate Manipulation Decoded, available on Amazon. Link to that is in the description. And we also have Lessons Learned While Working in a Prison, My Journey from Officer to Administration. It's a good book. Again, a book that's going to help you kind of navigate through some of the uncertainties in this profession. And again, just tips that I thought of along the way, but it's also partnered with other people from the profession who have supported those tips and complemented the material I wrote. So guys, if you get a chance, the link to that is also in the description. Okay, so here we go. So when it comes to creating relationship with those you lead, I want to mention something, guys. So when you're working in corrections is, let me get that picture out of there. Hold on. Corrections is an environment where there's so much liability. The consequences behind a bad decision could be life-threatening, if you will. So with that said, a lot of people think because the environment we're in is emergent, that there's no time to build relationships with people. You're going to have people that are going to come into leadership positions with that hard exterior, and they're going to think, and very position driven, and they're going to think that, I don't have time to build relationships. I don't need relationships. I can use my position, be a boss, and get things done. And I'm going to be honest with you, that may work at the beginning, but the longevity of it all, it never lasts, because at the end of the day, relationships are a part of becoming successful and effective in this position. As a leader, the other thing is, there may be some people that, as I said, may do it and become too soft. Remember, at the end game is when you build relationships, it's always an effort to be productive.
What do you mean by become too soft?
Well, I think that it's a good question. I think that if you're looking to build relationships as an end game, and that's what I'm just going to build relationships with the people I work with no effort to look at how those relationships are meant to be productive for the agency, that's where people can kind of walk all over you, So if you go in with building relationships as an end game and that's it, then I think that, you could be taken advantage of in a leadership position. I think that you have to kind of balance the effort to build relationships in that effort to be productive, because the last thing you want to do is make that the end game. And then at the end of the day, you're not even worried about being productive because you're more worried about, the I don't know, maybe getting upset because
so it's not about making friends,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. So Connie, you're right. So basically, it's more of you're going to build that relationship in an effort to be productive. Don't get me wrong, relationships is very important, but as I said, that it can't be an effort that I'm just going to build relationships and that's it. You got to have an end game to that. If you don't have an end game that goes outside of building relationships, then you're never going to be productive. And I want to mention one thing before we get into the tips, is that believe it or not, when you build relationships and you go to push to be productive, there's going to be risks there because you're going to be taking people into areas that they may not be comfortable with. But that's what you have to do. You're stretching people's comfort zone. And a lot of people are so afraid to push their people to the limits because they're afraid that they're going to burn the relationship. And it's like, yeah, but guys, we have to always have that effort to be productive. And most people want to grow. So they want to be pushed. They don't want to be bored. And for the people that don't want to be pushed, they could be pulling down the team. So having said that, building relationships should have an end game to be productive. I like what you said, Connie, that to me. But does that make sense? Am I saying that right?
No, it makes sense. I mean, I think in a nutshell, like you have to be intentional about building relationships, right? Like, because we are in a work environment and we want to, one, of course, be authentic, but the sake of building these relationships are really very strategic. Like, how do we be more effective as in our roles collectively, right? And usually that happens when you have a good working relationship with the people that you work with. And a lot of times, if you look at those leaders who do not have good relationships with their people, many times they get half-assed results because either one, the people don't buy in because they may not trust that leader, or sometimes that leader wasn't intentional about the reason why they were building a relationship to begin with, right? And sometimes that means you have to say, I know you are the expert in this thing, and I need to make sure that this is my go-to person, and I've got a good relationship with my go-to person on these things because it helps the operation run smoothly. And I think that's part of it. One, being intentional about making time to build those relationships, but it's also the intentionality behind actually building the relationship with the people that you lead. You're muted.
Damn it. I love the word intentionality. I never really saw it as much until I started reading leadership books. And basically, you have to connect the word leadership to intentionality because nothing easy is done. Nothing hard is done passively. And being a leader, you do have to make a lot of decisions. You have to make intentional efforts to keep things moving the way you want it to go. And just the word intentional really is just all about growth. It really is. If you're not intentional making these efforts, then eventually what's going to wind up happening is everything falls back. Whatever momentum you're creating, it just dies. It just dies.
Strategy. What is the strategy? Like building this network, building your team. You want your team to be strong, right? And so I think there's an intentionality behind identifying what are those skills in my team that they're really great at, and maybe I could help to continue to stretch them or to grow them. And then where are those areas that require some development? But you can only know that if you are intentionally building relationships with the team.
Yeah, and again, I like what you said, because it does take time because you're investing in people.
Yes.
So when you're investing in people, it has to be intentionality, because again, it's not you spend a day with somebody and that's it. No, you're going to invest because you got to get to know them. They got to get to know you. And then we got to create this trust, and by the way, guys, trust, it's unique because people think that trust is automatically there sometimes, and it's not. It has to be cultivated. At first, to be honest with you, for me at the higher positions, I do give people trust automatically, because again, when you oversee so many areas, I have to assume that the people in those positions know what they're doing. So I do give them trust automatically. I say distrust is earned, but trust has to be constantly cultivated. It does. That's an intentional effort. It goes beyond your words. It's your actions. Are you doing what you're saying? And I do try to say that if you also want to build good relationships and really balance the trust, you got to have a culture that's effort driven and not outcome driven. Would you agree with that, Connie?
Yes, because the moment someone fails, right? The moment people start blaming because we're only looking at the effort as we're only looking at the outcome as opposed to the effort is the moment that the culture really just takes a hit. And that's really not where we want to be at in that space.
Yeah, and guys, I want to say a thing that I do that just kind of like a sidebar here, but related to building relationships with your the people you supervise is I if they have a concern, I don't wait for the outcome before I let them know where I'm at because sometimes people could take forever to give me what their choice is. I try to let them know of their effort, of my effort in the process to make it happen because I think if you wait too long, people think that they're forgotten. You
Yeah.
know, and I like to keep them involved in the effort because if there's ever a chance I can showcase the effort, at least at the very beginning, to build that level of trust, I think that works because later on, when there's times where the effort can't be seen, you just got to go on the assumption that it's being done. You're going to have that reputation of, well, we know he tries because I've seen his other emails, so he's not afraid to speak up or she's not afraid to speak up because most of the effort really is just communicating those concerns. So, you know, if there's ever a chance where you could showcase your effort, I think that has a lot more value than waiting for an outcome. And again, that crosses into another thing. Commitment.
Or if it's a time where someone can acknowledge the effort someone else is giving, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's one thing that I showcase my effort. It's another thing for the leader to recognize the effort. And then it almost reinforces that positive behavior that you want to see. Like, I want to see the effort. I'm glad to see that you're doing all these things to accomplish the mission. And sometimes, we may not take the time. Maybe we don't have the time, right? But like, when you do have the opportunity to recognize someone's effort, I think it goes a long way.
Yeah, and I like how this is actually in my book, the stuff we're talking about here, but commitment versus promise. I think the efforts showcase a commitment as opposed to making a false promise. And be honest with you guys, the promise, if you want to try to build relationships, sometimes you're making a promise that's not yours to control. You know, it's not, but the commitment is. So, like again, if my I've seen people make promises, and I'm sitting here like, well, you can't control that. Like, because there's some people that know what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know what? I'll make the commitment to give you my effort. At the end of the day, I'm not in charge of the outcome. But then you get some people that are like, well, I can get that done. Really? Really? Because if you could get it done and that was something that you could control, why is it not done already?
Maybe they think they could get it done.
Well, yeah. I mean, hold on. All right, Connie. It's good to have positive belief, but I want to make sure that the thing is that you yourself know what's in your hands or not. I'd rather not go on false promises. I'd rather say, listen, I can commit to this. You have my word. And be honest with you guys, as I said, the effort, the commitment matters because I think in the end, for the people that are looking at outcomes, you're going to judge the person based on things they don't have control of, where I'd rather judge the person based on what I know they can put in.
But also, you just got to be realistic about your limitations, right? Like, there are some things that you simply can't make happen because of all the other things you have to do in order to accomplish it. And so I think from a leadership perspective, to make promises that you cannot, you can't keep, I think that does a lot to the bond that you're trying to build. And it does have an adverse impact on folks' ability to trust you.
Yes. And guys, I mean, think about this. This was actually before we got into the meat of the dialogue.
Right.
So, I mean, just automatically. No, because this is a dialogue that can go on forever. I mean, but we're just going to try to give some tidbits, but it's not all inclusive. So me and Connie were thinking about it first when we were doing the show. We wanted to give out 5 tips. But then when we looked at it, we said, you know what? All these tips kind of fall into this one thing. So what we could do is just focus on this one thing. And then kind of like in the advice, you'll see the tips that we were going to provide. Now, there's a book out there called 5 Levels of Leadership, and position 2 of the levels of leadership. So the second level is all about your permission to lead. So it's all about building relationships. So mind you, the first level is I got the position. But again, you can't use that in your effort to control people, because at that point, they're only following you because they have to. Eventually, you want to move to the level where they follow you because they want to, and that becomes the permission phase. And again, can't stay there too long because you have to connect that permission phase to being productive. So mind you, in the context, we're building relationships in an effort to be productive. That is where we want to move towards, not building relationships for the sake of building relationships. I don't want to be cold in that, but guys, just from a leadership perspective, I have to say that, because if not, if your primary goal is building relationships and making that your end game, there's a good chance that you could be manipulated and, truly being taken.
Boundaries will get crossed.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. Boundaries could get crossed. Now, in his book, he mentions care versus candor. And he said, John Maxwell, by the way, in this book, and he clearly says that this is where it comes down to when it comes to building relationships. You have to balance the care versus the candor. So basically, you have to show the people that you care, but you also have to be truthful to them. And by the way, that kind of connects. I mean, if you want someone that cares for you, you want people that are also honest with you. So I thought first we could talk about that. Connie, what's your thoughts when it comes to, building that relationship with your people and balancing care versus candor? What does that mean?
So for me, it's like, if you really want me to grow, like if you are my leader and you want the best for me, you want me to reach my fullest potential, I don't want you to lie to me about how great I am when I'm not great, right? Because then I don't have a true reflection of where I am and how much effort I need to put in order to be better, or in order to actually truly be great, right? Like, I think that, yes, when you care about your people and you do want the best for them, there's a tactful way that you will have honest conversations. And are there times where it may come off a little harsh? It may not be the intention, but there's always a way to soften that communication, especially when you care about the person. You can almost anticipate how this news or this information is going to make this person feel, and you care about the way they feel, right? You don't want them to become angry or to start walking around sort of with the chip on their shoulder, right? And so the way you communicate whatever your feedback is or your insights are, I think that really can show the person that you do care about their growth, their development, and that you are making the effort to even communicate in a way that they're going to be able to receive it.
Right. And Connie, most people are afraid of the candor part because most people are afraid of conflict and they're afraid of uncertainty. Again, when you're in a leadership position, I mean, you're there to make decisions, and decisions come when times are uncertain. So, when you're dealing with conflict, you have to, if you want to embrace that leadership position, you're going to have to be candid with your people, whatever the case may be.
Does candor mean that there's going to be conflict?
It doesn't, but I think some people feel that if there's a level of, here's what it is. Candor is straightforward. That means as a leader, you're telling people what they want to hear, even when they don't want to hear it. There's going to be a moment of that. I think that's where candor.
You're telling people what they don't want to hear.
Well, no, yeah, same thing. Yeah, you're telling people okay. Sometimes, you're telling people what they need to hear, even when they don't want to hear it. And I think the way he mentions it in the book, he puts care and candor on extremes. But you're right, they are connected. But having said that, there are some people that don't want to have the truth. They don't want to know it, and then that's when you kind of know those people. Like if I have someone that I want to lead and I want them to be successful, and it kind of crosses into this part here. Care values the person while candor values the potential. So if I had someone that I knew was great and I know that they're not stepping up and reaching their greatest potential, I got to have a dialogue with that individual, and then sometimes weak leaders may be so afraid to have that dialogue with an individual because they're more concerned about how that person's going to take that dialogue.
But if you have a good relationship with that person, it is much easier to be candid.
Right. But now, but here's the question, but you're right, Connie, but here's the question about that. So remember we said seeking relationship just as an end game. So like now, if I go into that mindset knowing that I have a good relationship and my objective right now is to preserve the relationship in my effort to be candid, I may not be doing what's correct.
So I'm not thinking that you have to preserve the relationship. I'm thinking if you go into that knowing this person knows me well enough to know I'm not coming at them sideways with any hidden agenda. right? Like if you know that I've worked with you all this time and it's always been about growth and potential and you reaching your potential, if I say, hey, listen, you really fucked up today, right? But here's what we're going to do in order to make sure this doesn't happen again. Right. Like, I think that's a very different conversation. It is still being candid. It's not sugarcoating that somebody messed up today. You did mess up today, but here's what we need to do in order to make sure that you grow from this situation, and also so that this doesn't happen again.
Yeah,
But I can receive that from somebody who I know has no ill intentions towards me.
well, no, I know. By the way, I agree. I mean, in the effort to be candid with the person, I mean, you're looking to be constructive. I think that there are some people that get so concerned about, well, if I say this, how's that going to affect our relationship? And the problem is at this point, if you don't, how does that affect the team? You know,
Right.
sometimes we get so worried about our individualized relationship with somebody that we may be afraid to be candid with them, because if we do and they take it a certain way, and then like you said something unique too. These are messages that if you really want the person to grow and reach their greatest potential, you can't sugarcoat it, eat it. And so it may not give you the finesse you want to do, like how you want to say it. Like this is more of a professional dialogue. So having said that, sure, I would like to tell them that, this will be all great, blah, blah, blah. But what about if it's not?
It may not be.
Yeah. Like how would it be? Like, if I'll ask you a question, if you get someone that's not stepping up, right? And now I have to be candid with them and say, I care for you. And that's why I'm bringing this dialogue up, because I know you have potential and I know you want to grow, but be advised, that's the care part, but be advised, if you don't step up and you don't do what's expected of you, there could be a consequence here. Now, all of a sudden, that latter part of the dialogue, that candor part, even though it is an effort to care, because I don't want to do the consequence, but I'm also in a position where I may have to, that person could take that as, yo, really? You're going to write me up? You're going to come after me? I thought we were cool. I thought we were good. So when you have people that in a leadership position that just go for the relationship without an effort to be productive, the problem is that there's a good chance that the truth, the candor, may not be able to exist in a world like that. Well,
that's why the boundaries matter, right? Like I honestly feel that when you have a solid working relationship with people and they understand sort of, okay, this is where the friendship is, this is where the working relationship is, and then here's where I got to do my job, right? And I honestly feel like when you sometimes have to have those very crucial conversations with people, sometimes it's starting the conversation off where we are. Hey, listen, I love you. I think the work you do is amazing. However, this is what took place today. This can't happen again. And certainly it doesn't have to be those words, right? Like there's ways to finesse that conversation, but also letting them understand in the long run, here's the expected behavior, or here's the expected change. And should you not see those changes, that there are, corrective actions or whatever that will come from that. But I think it is the candor that allows you to have that conversation and still show that you care for the person as a person, and that you can still acknowledge whatever the positive things that they are bringing to the table or bringing to the situation. But you can't ignore who you are and your position in this dynamic.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, Connie, that you're right, because I don't want people to think I'm cold when I'm saying this. I'm just saying it from a leadership perspective. At the end of the day, is why are you having this dialogue? I'm hoping that you're having the dialogue to be productive with the team. I mean, that has to be the end game. Yeah. Because as you said, if you have just the relationships that you're looking to build and that's the end game, the problem is the team will suffer in the long run. I mean, listen, in the long run, they will. I mean,
because now you have a whole bunch of friends. You got a team of friends as opposed to people who are working.
So Connie, here's the funny thing. I love what you said, because there may be some people that may be okay with that, but I think from a leadership position, you just made your position more complicated, Because when it comes to doing something that could be constructive, there's a good chance in your effort to be candid, you're going to wind up thinking, well, how's that going to affect our friendship? You know what's funny, Connie? I think you said something funny. I'm not a positional leader, neither are you. We know that, right?
Yeah.
But there are some times where you're going to have to play the position. No, you don't want to, but there are some times where you're reacting to a situation that's like, you know what? I got to be positional. And the problem is, I think it becomes harder if you do have like, I'm friends with everyone that I'm supervising, because as much as that's a great and beautiful picture, the problem is there are going to be times where you're going to have to play that position. And then you're going to have to ask yourself, when I go to confront that person about this concern, am I confronting them as their boss or their friend? Because I will tell you this, for people that have been in situations where they had to unfortunately act and write up somebody that was a former peer, that was a former friend, but now because they're in a supervisory position, they had to do something to maybe take note of the person's negative actions. The reason why it became complicated for them was because the relationship, right, superseded the need to be productive. So it's like, well, why are you having trouble taking this next step? You've given me every reason why you should. You've exhausted every effort to be constructive. Now you're at that next step. And the first thing they'll say is, after they've exhausted every effort and they've done everything above and beyond, but now it's gotten to that point where they have to write it, the first thing they say is, well, we were friends, or we are friends. And it's like, yeah, but that can't cloud you. So in your effort to build relationships, you still have to have that boundary where you could be candid and obviously care is automatic. I think if you're a leader, if you don't care for your people, you can't lead. Right. I'm sorry. You know what I mean?
Care is kind of like a given, but you do have those autocratic leaders who, like, that's not the focus, right? The focus is on the very regimented, policy procedure. This is what this says I should be doing, different management styles, leadership styles, where, some people just don't have that care side of them. And then, some people are kind of void of some of the social cues. And so care is not really, a part of their makeup, right? Like it's kind of like, I'm just here to do a job. Here's the mission. I'm going to follow the orders. I expect you to follow the orders. And never does that care come in unless something significant really happens, like there's a death, this is something very traumatic that happens, then you actually may see a glimpse of the care from that particular leader. But I think for most people, care is a given because we are in the people business, like it.
And Connie, remember you said the word intentionality, kind of connected it with investment and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Guys, I think as you move from position and you move into this relationship building, you are going to push away from the memos and stuff because you're going to have to invest in time with the people. You're going to have to get to know them, and you don't want your people, your team run by memos. You don't, you want to have upfront personal contact. And the funny thing is, guys, is when you're exposed to those constant interactions, there's a good chance that you could develop a very close rapport to your people. So there is a balance there because I want them to see me. I want to be accessible. I want to be visible. I want to interact with my people. And then there's always that vulnerability that if you allow them too close, those constant interactions, that it could be tough to, write up the people that you're building these connections with. So again, even as you do that, you always have to remember in the back of the mind why you're doing it.
People don't buy into memos though. Right. No, and I think, as a leader, we just have to know that no one is buying into the memo. Whoever's delivering the message is what they're going to buy into. How did that person sound? What was their tone? Did they take it serious? Right. How insistent were they on us following this? Did they take the time to make sure we understood what the intent of this memo and what the expectations are? So you can post a memo wherever, you get lucky if someone reads it, right? But just, random tip, no one's buying into the memo. We're buying into the messenger.
Yeah, you know what? John Maxwell says it too. You don't buy into the memo, or you don't buy into the vision, you buy into the leader.
Yep.
If you have a good leader, they could translate any vision, but you could have a great vision and a shitty leader, and people are like, I'm not following that person. Give a crap how your vision is. So again, I think that was a good part to start off with. Karen values the person, while Candor values the potential, and I think that kind of makes sense, guys, because again, I think when he meant with the potential was if you have someone that's kind of falling backwards and they could do better, you have to be willing to step up and be truthful with them and tell them where they need to be. That's where the potential comes in. And most people want to avoid that conflict. You can't as a leader. The dialogue has to happen. And believe it or not, if you really cared for them, then that dialogue should be automatic. I think so. Now, the other thing, I thought this was cool, is caring establishes relationships while Candor expands it. I think this matters because here's the thing, guys. Remember we talked about just now that you don't want a memo-driven organization. Eventually you want to build relationships and you want to kind of move towards your people. Well, believe it or not, the first thing that happens when we're building a team is we look for compatibility. Usually compatibility comes obviously with respect and trust, but usually something that we're going for together. The same vision, same values, whatever it is, right? So we have compatibility. That brings us together. But as we're growing towards each other, we also have to grow up with each other. So the problem is a lot of people are willing just to be compatible and then just leave it there. But the problem is you're still growing up, and if you don't maintain to grow up together, if you don't kind of work with the team and everybody's moving up where they need to be, the problem is you start growing apart because you're growing in an isolated fashion. So I do value what he's saying here when he says care establishes the relationship, because it does. It's going to bring us together on the vision, the mission, the values that we have, whatever it is. It's going to show that we're like-minded. But the Candor, I'm sorry, no, it's this one. No, that's right.
You're right, the first, right.
Yeah, but the Candor expands it because I think when you start to kind of say, hey, guys, this is where we need to be so we can grow together. So it's not just me, we're doing this together. I think that is where the relationship starts to become evergreen or longevity. That's when you start to build longevity in the relationship. Would you agree with that? Because he also has another thing where he talks about how Candor also directs the relationship, which we kind of touched on. But what's your thoughts on that, Connie? Candor expands it versus Karen establishing it?
Yeah, so I think that when we're all on the journey together, right, like there's a certain bond that we just together we're building this bond, strengthening this bond. And I think when things are beginning to happen on that journey, the more open we are with each other, that here's a way for you to be better, here's something that you could improve on, like those, when we give each other those little tidbits, right, like that prompt us to think about like next steps, right? Like, oh, I didn't even think about that. I mean, I kind of think about how, like I think you and I might have talked about this before, like when people are preparing for an exam, right? Everyone's preparing for the exam. We're studying together. We're growing together. We're pushing each other. We're helping each other to broaden our knowledge. I think that that's right where that is. That, yeah, I might not be strong in this area, but this person I'm studying with is very strong in that area, and they start to kind of feed into me. It's almost like, as we pour into each other's cups, we just start to grow stronger. And I think honesty is required for that to happen.
Well, it's funny because the isolated agendas come when the results come in.
Right.
For those studied tests, right? I mean, everybody's working together until you find out you don't get promoted. And then you see who's really supportive and who's not. Again, I think for a leader, you should know those times too, by the way, when, we're working together, keep the momentum going, right? Keep the momentum going with the team, keep it going. And then when you feel that, there's maybe something that could be causing a divide, that's when you really have to go ahead and start getting involved to try to maintain the momentum. Because here's the funny thing too, guys, relationships can help build any organization, especially in corrections. Even your effort to be productive, you're always going to have to look back down at the at the relationship level to kind of make sure you're balanced up, because you never leave relationships behind. And as a positional leader, you can't skip relationships, because if you do and you go right to the productive side, what's going to wind up happening is you're not going to have longevity. You know, believe it or not, I think Ramsey said that bosses are good at the beginning because they could probably get things quicker. They can get things done quicker than a leader at the beginning. But when it comes to longevity, leaders are the ones that keep it lasting, because leaders are the ones that build the connections to where people want to work. You know, and by the way, you know, when we're looking to build relationships, guys, the reason why you have to go above the positional side is because you want people to do more than what their position tells them to do sometimes too. You want them to go above and beyond. So if you're playing the position, they're going to play the position, right? Would you agree with that, Connie?
Absolutely. But I think it's also a matter of, like, I think about leadership, right? Like, so within leadership, leaders generally have those soft skills that are the skills that help you to sustain relationships.
And they're
Right?
dynamic and adaptable.
Yeah. And so, you know, to your point, I think I can see how a leader would be the one to kind of foster longevity in those relationships.
Yeah, and you know, it's also fluid too, because you're not going to be at that same level with everyone.
Right.
You know, so all because you've reached this one, let's say me and Connie, I know at Connie, we got a great relationship, and I can definitely get us working together where we're productive, but that doesn't mean I have the same relationship with Russ. So there could be a good time where I'm a level 3 leader with Connie and then a level 1 leader with Russ. You know, I mean, it just really depends on your relationship with those individuals. Now, guys, that was the bulk of the discussion, but let me just I want to give out some smaller things too that are rather a bit simplistic in nature, but maybe we can cover it in a little bit more of a different way. But obviously, these are simple tips, but obviously, communication's key when it comes to building relationships with those you supervise.
Honest communication.
Oh, good job. Yeah. Honest communication, because again, you're looking to build trust, and trust does start with clarity. You know, are you transparent? Do I understand do I understand what it is that you expect from us? Do you understand what it is that you expect from me? You know, I mean, if you don't have good, honest communication, there is no way to build good relationships, because communication, I mean, that's pretty much the center of everything, guys. I don't think we have to beat that down too much. What's your thoughts, Connie? Any advice when it comes to communication?
No, I think it's just really clear. Honest and transparent communication goes a long way. When people know where you're really coming from, you don't have a hidden agenda, like, they're more open to you as a leader, and they're more willing to follow because you have honestly communicated what you require of them, what your expectations are, and hopefully you were open to hearing what they expect from you as a leader.
Yeah, and I think also a big thing, guys, is that I think Connie just touched on it right now. The respect comes from modeling behavior that aligns with your, you know, your expectations, your values, you know, stuff that they're connecting with. I mean, you could say you have all these values, but if your behavior is in conflict with that, they're going to lean towards the behavior. They're not going to lean towards what you're saying. And guys, I'll be honest with you. Here's something that's unique. Maybe this actually matters too. As you become a leader, and you go past the position, you're building relationships in your effort to be productive. When you build relationships with people and they start to kind of see what you're about, you build that level of trust, you have that connection, shared values and whatnot. It allows you to take risks, because if by chance you fail any effort to be productive, you've already built relationships with your people who may allow for that failure, because they know what you're about. They trust you already, and it gives you. They've seen you, so it gives you a chance to take some levels of risk and not worry about, you know, losing the trust or the relationships you built, because you spent time and effort building those relationships. Now, granted, you can't constantly fail. And it also depends on what you're failing on, because I will tell you one thing, as you move up, it takes a long time, but you can go down a lot quicker. One thing that's very hard to do after you build a relationship is violate the trust that established it. If you violate the trust that established it, you wind up falling all the way back. And to rebuild trust, let's just do this. Rebuilding a failure because you try to do something and you couldn't meet it is one thing. That's forgivable. Or maybe easy for people to look around because you built relationships. But once you violate some level of trust with your people, it's going to take you forever, if you're ever even lucky, to build yourself back to where it was on that level 2 phase, which is coming to that permission to lead, right? Connie, I mean, we can make mistakes. You build relationships, it happens. But when you mess up with the trust,
everyone makes mistakes. And I think as long as you hold yourself accountable and your staff see that you hold yourself accountable for the mistake that you made, and you can actually talk about that mistake openly and talk about what you've done to correct it and whatever those things are, I think that level of transparency are the things that open your staff up to being forgiving. They're going to be more forgiving because they're like, oh yeah, and then when you go to hold them accountable for something they may have done that wasn't right, it wasn't policy, it wasn't whatever, I think there still has to be like that ability to fail and get feedback and grow from that failure, as opposed to everything being so punitive all the time.
Well, there's an open-mindedness.
Yeah.
There's an open-mindedness because, again, if be honest, even as leaders, you're going to fail. You can't expect to be perfect. And I think sometimes it's good for your people to know your vulnerabilities, because you're also showing them that you're authentic, which kind of touches on another way to build relationships is be authentic. Be truthful. You could strive for perfection without thinking you're perfect. Yep. In the effort to strive for perfection, just be authentic and know that you yourself can fail. And it's okay if your people know it, because I think vulnerabilities bring us closer together. I know some people, when they move up into that leadership position, they actually believe that they need to be perfect. And I know in this profession, in corrections and medical side too, there could be a reason why you want to be seen as that, because you have to make decisions that could put people's lives at risk. And I get it, but there's also a human element. And I think if you do make a mistake, I think you will get more by admitting you made the mistake and being vulnerable, because there's authenticity there, than trying to cover it up and point blame at everything else or every other situation. When at the end of the day, it's the people, they know you're human and they know that you're going to be faced with impossible decisions. I mean, I tell you something too, by the way, in this profession, I think people regret not making a decision as opposed to making the wrong decision, believe it or not, in the long run. I think people have greater regret for never moving. And I think the people that are looking to connect to you as a leader, they want action. Again, they don't want to be frozen in time. They want a leader that's willing to make a decision. And if you make a mistake, that's fine, because even if you admit it, guess what? We have a real good growth when you admit what's wrong.
But when just know that when you're frozen in time, they will second guess you every time.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a good point.
You not making a decision, you not leaning on your experience, your expertise, you're making a decision based on all the information that you have at the time. You're better off making the best decision you can with the information you have, as opposed to not making a decision, because the next time that you call yourself stepping up, you could know for sure that everyone around you is probably going to be second guessing you.
You made another good point there too, because as a leader, trust is also about competency. Your front line do need to see you being productive, because if you have high achievers that are in your team, they're not going to stay around long enough if you just want to stay on that relationship level and not be productive, because they're not going to see you as competent.
Yeah, so you're my boss, right? Many people are going to see you like, this is my boss. Like, I'm not trying to be friends with my boss, right? Like, so what's the purpose of this relationship that you're trying to build with me, right? Like, because I think, yes, in our minds as leaders, you want to be able to be engaging and all those wonderful things, but you are going to have staff that are like, listen, this person is my boss. This person is not my friend. I don't want to have a just random conversation. Like, if she's coming to me for something, it's for a reason, right? Like, and so they're thinking productivity, right? Like, what do you need from me? What can I do? Let me make it happen, right? And you're thinking, oh, I'm just here to shoot the breeze. No, no, no. That's not the kind of relationship. So I think in being aware of those boundaries is also being aware of the boundaries that your staff may have.
Hey, you know what, kind? That was a great shift because I forgot about that. You know, you're right. I mean, you're gonna have, as we talked about the high achievers, you're gonna want to have people that like, yo, this relationship, this guy ain't getting us nowhere though.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, in the end, this guy
This
ain't
ain't
getting us
helping me get
nowhere.
the job done.
Right. That's actually a
What's the point?
that was actually a very good perspective because again, you know, you're right. If you can't prove to be productive, there are going to be people that, yeah, we're friends, but I don't respect you in your position.
Right.
You know, because you haven't, so his 5 levels of leadership, it's pretty unique because as you cross into the 5 levels, so you have the position, then eventually you go past the rights to lead to the permission to lead in your efforts to be productive. So people start following you based on what you've done for the organization. Then once they see that you're successful with doing things for the organization, the next thing they look at is what have you done for me? Mm-hmm. Because I know if you're productive for the agency, then maybe I'll start, hey, can you help me? I mean, think about it. Mentor relationships, by the way. When you're looking for a mentor, which is a relationship, guys, it should be a relationship based on mutual growth. The funny thing is I don't want to be mentored by a friend in this profession. I want to be mentored by someone that has proven to be a good leader by being productive. And then ultimately you establish a reputation where you look to, eventually pass on all that knowledge and effort to make people greater than you are. So you have leaders developing leaders. But think about that when it comes to a mentor.
Oh my goodness. Look how many people don't want someone to be greater than they are.
Well, that's the problem. So you know what, Connie, you made a good point because so if you're a positional leader and that's all you care about is your position, you wind up protecting the position, even if it's at the expense of helping your people grow. So again, guys, part of the relationship is knowing this. I would always have this in mind is you want your team to be better than you. And the reason why you want that to happen is so you don't let any selfish, isolated agendas affect that team's growth. Because at the end of the day, you don't want a leader who's jealous by saying, well, let me not give Connie this because that one day she could take my position. It is what it is. It is what it is. I mean, to be honest with you, when you're at the front line, you get skill. But as you move up, it's about managing people. The skill, you manage the people that have the skill. But if you're going to be jealous and still want to be the best at a skill that you no longer should be doing because you're managing the people that do it, you're doing things backwards. Eventually, as you leave, you want listen. If you want to grow and you want your people to grow, then you can't be the lid. Like if Connie's better than me,
leaders need to be building more leaders. Like that's just a reality, right?
That's so the pinnacle.
That's the succession plan, right? Like we aren't going to always be in these positions. And if I'm not building more leaders, how do we sustain this organization? Like I feel like that's just the natural progression of growth. Here it is, people retiring, resigning, whatever is happening, but no one is prepared to step into these leadership roles because we've been so scared to share all of the stuff that we've been doing and all the learning that we've had. And we go to conferences and come back and we keep all the information to ourselves. But like, how are we helping the rest of our team grow and become the next leaders? Right. Because I feel like that's for me anyway, that's the greatest reward. Like I was able to show this person how to do this thing. And now look at them now. Like I'm so glad when I talk to people who I've supervised and they're like, Connie, I went back to nursing school. I went back to whatever. I graduated now. This is what I'm doing. And like, that makes me super excited. But like the fact that some people get into this space where it's like, I can't for a moment share any of my learning with anybody because they might want to take my job. Well, then the job's not really yours.
But Connie, you're right. Because in the end, Connie, if you're sitting there not looking to get people to go past you, then you're limiting them.
Yep.
And guys, by the way, back in the day, corrections is constantly changing. Back in the day, maybe they was steady. But right now we're changing. So if you're not willing to grow and adapt with the times, I mean, I think corrections is changing every 2-3 years at this point. And if you want to be that lid and again, just, I don't want this person to go too far up because they could pass me. The problem is you're killing the organization, not just the individuals, but the organization, because the organization, I think, to be honest with you, I think Connie said it best. I as an organization, I want our leaders to be better than the ones we had yesterday. I'm sorry, guys. I mean, don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean we break away from the core values, but if you have a mindset where yesterday was the best and that's where we always wanted to be, then we don't move. So, do I want somebody to be better than me? Yeah,
We always need
we do.
skills. We need new skills to take us to the next level. And that's just kind of the way I see it, right? No matter what, like this person was an awesome leader, loved everything they did, right? And they transferred as much knowledge as they could to their team, great. But then that team is now dealing with newer technology, more information, whatever that is, which is probably going to make them an even better leaders. And I feel like that's the way, like, we try to make sure that we're improving this institution along the way, that we're constantly training and we're building and we're growing and we're sharing information and all that goodness. It is what it is.
Yeah, and Connie, in closing, before you give your final thought,
Yes.
I just want to reiterate one thing that you said before, and then we'll go into our final thoughts. But I think when it comes to the candor, when it comes to building relationships, I know it was part of the dialogue we said, but I kind of want to maybe give it its own little section real quick about boundaries. Maybe you can kind of express boundaries both ways, because I like what you said before about the perspective from the front line and how they may view their leader, but also more importantly, how the leader may view the front line. And again, I think they're both responsible for the boundaries. I do. I think, yeah, the leader definitely, but definitely the front line as well. I mean, they should be aware of their actions as well, because we're all human, but boundaries. I mean, what are the boundaries that will help navigate a relationship at the workplace that's also productive?
So I think, it's not about leading by title, right? Like, because I think by virtue that you have the title, people know who you are, right? Like, no one has to walk around with, the title on their sleeve, right? But I do feel like as a leader, there's certain ways and certain things that you need to do in order to be present and for your staff to see that you're there and they know that you're willing to help and all those wonderful things. But I think you also have to be able to tap into those social cues where, like the staff is a little, maybe it may feel standoffish because you're ready to build a relationship, but maybe you've not even gotten close enough to the staff for them to be ready to build any particular working relationship with you. Right. So I think a lot of times those building of relationships come when you start working shoulder to shoulder with the staff. Like, I remember sitting in the nursing station going through health records with some of the nurses, right? And it was like, oh, so one, it was like, oh, Connie, you know that, right? Because I'm not a nurse by trade, it's easy to kind of think like, oh, she's just the administrator, right? But like, you wouldn't know until you sat with me and saw like, oh, she kind of knows her stuff. What's going on here? But then also it gave me the opportunity to see how clinically sound my nurses were, because I'm sitting with them and they're like, oh no, you don't do this because of this. Oh no, you do this because of that. Like, they knew policies, procedures, all the stuff, like right off the top of their heads. And there was a level of mutual respect that was gained just because we were now kind of sitting side by side and sort of working together. And I feel like there has to be a point in your working relationship with your staff where, one, they get to see you, like not you just the title, but you the person. And there's a point where they're like, oh, she's a cool person. Like, but they also know like she means business when she comes around, right? Like, if she's coming around, she's looking for something, like, let's take care of the something first, and then we could say, oh, Connie, how's Kendall, right? Because otherwise she's not going to talk about Kendall until this thing that she's working on is complete. But I think that only happens when your staff gets to know you. And so we can't just focus on, oh yeah, I'm gonna get to know you, so I'm just gonna be almost intrusive in someone's workspace, right? Where like they're not ready for that. I don't know you from nowhere. Like, you're my administrator. Tell me what you need, and then go about your business, right? And then there will be a time, you come over. Oh, I'm just checking in, see how you doing. Everything's good. All right, great, and you keep it moving. Because sometimes it's just a matter of you kind of letting them know like there is a softer side to you as like the leader, and not so much that you're looking for them to give you that same reception. I think that will come over time, But that's what I mean by one, the intentionality of making time to build those relationships so it gets to the point where they're open to seeing you as more than just the leader.
Yeah, and I like what you said before too about if the boundaries are established and it's clear, and we all know what the boundaries are, guys. Professionalism in the workplace. I mean, however you define it, we know what the boundaries are. Yeah, and again, management knows what they are, or the leader, the correctional leader knows what it is, and front line knows what it is. Then, to be honest with you, the position is implied, but it doesn't have to be played out.
Right.
And I think that opens up a great dynamic for a relationship where everybody understands the position of the leader, and we're able to have a professional relationship without the leader ever having to play that role. I think that's a great day, be honest with you, is staff understanding that I can go into that role, or the leader can go into that role if need be, but they don't have to. Yeah, because we're not pushing them into that. I mean, it's funny because I even remember myself sometimes saying, hey, don't make me be a boss today. I mean, but I know, but you know what I mean? It's like we're establishing these professional roles so we don't have to. So it's implied. I guess that's what it is. The boundaries imply the position, without having to announce it. I don't have to walk in and announce everywhere I go that this is my title and do as I tell you to do, because it's seen. And that comes with the respect and trust. I'll be honest with you too. Can I say one more thing? If you're in an effort to build the relationships and you're constantly reminding people of your position, you need to go back and look at yourself as a leader.
Right.
Because if you're reminding everybody you interact with of your position, then I think you're also doing it wrong.
They shouldn't need to be reminded.
No, they shouldn't need to be. And again, it's not because we're arrogant. It's just because that, hey, I got the position. I mean, it's funny. This is unique. A quick little story, but I remember a CO who went to stop two inmates from fighting, that literally pulled out his badge and announced, hey, stop, DOC. It's like, no, they can assume that position. It's implied. You know what I mean? You're wearing the uniform. You got everything else. We could safely assume they know who you are and that position of authority. But yeah, it's true. It's like we could safely assume you have that role. You don't have to go ahead and remind people that that's who you are. But you know what the funny thing is when I got to know the person, it went with how he played his role, though, unfortunately, because he had no problem telling everybody, like the inmates, when he walked the unit. Every time the inmate had a concern, and instead of the person trying to address the concern, he would quickly go like this, point to his badge. So the inmate, it's like, what are you doing?
What is that? What was
just to remind them that I'm the position, I'm in charge. Guys, if you're doing that every day, you're not in charge. You're using your position. That's not, at the end of the day, your positions run thin here, man. People start to look at you.
You're losing credibility every time you do that.
Yeah, and listen, not to be disrespectful, but you do that to certain inmates, they'll spit right on that. You know what I mean? I'm not being, but it's true. It's like, no, at the end of the day, guys, they're looking at you, not what you're wearing. But I also like to think, but Connie, that plays out in the relationships too. If I'm going to walk around all day and an employee has a concern and I'm quick to say, look what I got on my collar, or look at the gold badge I got, or in Connie's case, I got a longer syringe. I don't know how you guys note medical rank. Is it longer syringes? Was I close?
No.
Is it longer syringes?
No way.
Like whoever has the longest syringes, like the nurse manager?
No.
Oh, I was way off.
No way.
Something with the longest syringe, no?
No.
Because I can picture Connie walking in, look at my syringe. You know what I mean? Who are you disrespecting today? But you know what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying.
Let me ask you a question. In the medical profession, how do they superficially push their position? Like, I guess in custody, we may point at the badge or the ranks on our shoulders, the silver bars. How would medical push position?
So it goes by degree, right? So there are certain limitations to your certification or to your degree. So if you're an LPN, a CNA, or an LPN, or RN or APRN, like that kind of goes up the chain as far as your credentials. And so typically, you know who the higher credential, the highest holding credential is, right? So you got your doctors, and then you got the medical APRN, and those two are people who can prescribe medication. And then with the RNs, they aren't able to prescribe medication. They would call and get the doctor's orders, or if an APRN is on site, and that's the highest ranking medical individual there. So it really goes by degree, because the scope of that licensure dictates how much you can or cannot do in the medical world. But I have to say, some of those LPNs that have been on the job for a really long time, I've seen them run circles around some of the fresh RNs who just came out of school, right? Like, and so there's that experience that, you know, kind of trumps the degree at times. And certainly, yeah, there's limitations, but I think the reality is that we usually know, like, who's a nurse who knows her stuff, right? And that's usually that informal leader that everybody goes to ask her, oh, I saw this, can you come check this out for me? Can you look at this for me? And I'm sure she's exhausted, whoever that person is, because people know her clinical skills are on point, and they are more willing to lean on her judgment than anybody else's.
And you know what's funny? Sometimes we get cross-departmental, I guess, rank concerns, if you will. And it's funny because sometimes there'll be no words said. It's just pure body language, where you have a custody supervisor, let's say, and a medical supervisor. And guys, there's no word being said, but you sit back and watch them talking. You got custody maybe going like this, and the nurse pointing to her degree on the wall. And this is what they're doing for 20 minutes. Right? Am I right? Come on, you're laughing because you know that's right to some extent. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, it may not be literally doing that, but I get what you're saying.
Okay,
yes.
All right, just making sure. Hey, Connie, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
Man, I would just like to say, like, listen, leadership can be tough, right? Like, I think that there's so many ways to engage staff and to retain staff and to show staff who you are and let them know that you're there for them. I think that it's most important, though, that you show up and you be present and you be authentic, because then staff can get to know who you really are and understand what your expectations are. Like, how else will we align on values and all the things that we think are important, or all the things that are important to us, right? Like, staff will never know that if we never give them an opportunity. So just kind of bring the veil down a little bit and, you know, allow for the staff to truly get to know you. And then I think that's the point where you start to see their full potential, because they're more willing then to open up and allow you to see who they are.
Is it okay to be a positional leader with your kids?
Honestly, I think the psychology behind that is no, it's not.
Really?
Right? Yeah, I think the psychology, I was just watching something the other day. I think the psychology behind that is that, yes, your kids know that you're the parent, right? But like, the reality is that in order for you to truly connect with them, you've got to be able to, like, understand where they're coming from, right? Not necessarily you got to relate. You don't have to, you know, become a kid again, but there's a way that you kind of honor or acknowledge what they're feeling, what they're experiencing. And while you might not think it's important, it's really important to them. And so you kind of acknowledge that, but, you know, you don't necessarily have to be positional, because I think they say, like, so kids will then be more willing to kind of relate to you, like, because you're not like the disciplinarian that I grew up with, right? Like, there was no expressing nothing, right? But like Kendall, who wants to tell me all of her feelings and all the, like, it's like, oh my God.
So when I got my 5-year-old and she's digging her hands in her butt to smell if she went poopy, I have to say, Sienna, I know why you're doing that. I totally understand. I can see where you're coming from.
Uncomfortable. Let's go get you cleaned up.
Where's mom? Where's mom? Hey guys, so again, building relationships. I mean, we said a lot. I mean, without trust, so I think that's where the candor comes in. Trust also comes from care. Care could be seen through your behaviors. Again, we talked about effort over outcome, commitment over promise. These are things that your people need to see on a regular basis. I'd also like to mention consistency. You don't want to be inconsistent. And again, inconsistency can come from your words and your actions, or just you not who are you today and who are you tomorrow, and not being able to know if one day you're great, the next day you're miserable, and one day you're neutral. It's like, you know what, guys, I don't even know when I can approach you because I don't know what your mood is going to be that day. So I think when it comes to building relationships, Connie made the key word today too, intentionality. If this is intentional, building relationships is intentional. It's hard work, it's investment, and find time to do it. I don't care how busy you are during the day. Your people matter. Find time to build those relationships, because at the end of the day, if you don't do it, you're never going to sustain productivity. I mean, that's the key. And if you don't sustain productivity, people, they'll be your friend, but they won't trust you to lead them anywhere. If that makes sense. I think so. I believe that makes sense. As always, guys, the show is Tear. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post up a video. Stay safe.